DRUbit, D-R-U-bit. The DRU stands for Diluent Recovery Unit. The bit stands for diluted bitumen, the ultra-heavy sour crude Alberta wants to ship by pipeline to Prince Rupert or Kitimat on the west coast. Since 2021, Gibson Energy has been shipping 21,000 barrels per day of DRUbit by rail to the U.S. Gulf Coast. Now, as it happens, the Canadian National Railway has a rail line to Prince Rupert, and the Canadian Pacific Railway has one to Vancouver. So, why is Canada talking only about building new pipelines when it has an alternative that doesn't include laying huge pipes through sensitive rainforest ecosystems? I'll tell you why. Cost. Shipping a barrel of DRUbit to Prince Rupert would likely be around $16 compared to $11 to Burnaby on the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline. The cost is a bit higher, but DRUbit by rail offers oil companies other benefits, such as savings on diluent recovery and then flexibility. Because there's only one operating plant, we don't know if scaling up production would bring down costs. It probably will, but some clever engineer needs to sharpen their pencil and do the math. And that's really my point here. Alberta is fixated on pipelines, so that's all Canadians talk about is pipelines. No one is exploring alternatives. No one is asking, what is the cost of risk associated with a pipeline? The risk of a stranded asset if global oil demand peaks in 2030 and declines fairly quickly after that, as the International Energy Agency forecasts. The risk of political strife between BC and Alberta ruining the national consensus Prime Minister Mark Carney needs to re-engineer the Canadian economy's outsized reliance on the United States. The risk of an environmental disaster in the Great Bear Rainforest if a pipeline bursts. Well, here's my suggestion. Let's expand the pipeline discussion to include alternatives like DRUbit or the Canadian National Railway's Canapucks, or using bitumen to make advanced materials right in Alberta. Expanding bitumen production and exporting Alberta oil to Asia and Europe is a complex issue that deserves more brainstorming than it's getting. Canada doesn't have to just roll over and give the oil industry what it wants. The rest of this video includes an interview with Energi economist Richard Masson and a Gibson Energy video explaining the basics of DRUbit. They should be the starting point for the Alberta Energy Department or the Federal Department of Natural Resources to begin investigating what could save Canada a real headache.
There used to be 7 years ago no crude moved by rail, but then when we didn't have enough pipelines and people needed options, we started to move more crude by rail. So the terminal that Gibson and U.S. Development Group operate at Hardisty right now does about 3 unit trains a day. So 300 or 180,000 barrels a day approximately moves by rail from that facility. And I think they're intending to grow it another unit train a day, so that'd take it to 240,000. So it's the largest facility in Alberta. And the idea is right now in each of those rail cars, about 30% of it is this light diluent. And that, although it's mixed with the bitumen, if a tank car crashes and gets heated up, that stuff starts to boil out. It has vapor pressure. That's the stuff that has the potential to be hazardous. And so the idea is if we have less diluent in the rail car, not only do we get 30% more of what we actually want to ship, which is bitumen, but we also reduce its hazard level, and so you can get better freight rates. So it's about cost reduction, about improving the safety performance.